Hi, I'm Jory,
And I'm Torin.
and we're going to be talking about the importance of both upland and riparian habitat for bird species abundance and richness, and if forest buffer widths will help to maintain them. This study can be found in a paper written by Scott F. Pearson and David Manuel called Breeding Bird Response to Riparian Buffer Width in Managed Pacific Northwest Douglas Fir Forests.
So this study was taking place in the South Cascade Mountains of Washington State, ranging as far north as the Cedar River watershed and south to the Columbia River, all of which is in the Western Hemlock Zone. All this land is either privately owned by timber companies or owned by Washington State. Just trying to find the sweet spot of no change in bird species abundance and richness to maximum amount of allowable timber harvest along these second and third ranked streams.
So parameters that were observed and recorded were species abundance of all bird species in the area, species richness, meaning the number of different species in the area, and similarities of bird communities. In addition, all sites were at low elevation, less than 620 meters, and were in second growth forests, so 45 to 65 years old, dominated by Douglas fir, western hemlock, and western cedar, with some red alder and big leaf maple. The study was measured pre-harvest and again 1 and 2 years after the harvest. Observations were only made on second and third stream orders using the hierarchical classifications of streams in the Strehler method.
So why was the study conducted? 82% of Colorado's breeding bird population can be found in riparian areas, but less than 1% of western United States has any. Because the bird populations occur so close to and in riparian areas, the slightest change may have devastating effects on species associated with it.
So the study used the 4 bird species pictured on this slide as representatives of birds that specialize in deciduous trees and berry producing shrubs, as compared to birds that specialize in coniferous trees.
As lumber harvesting is an inevitability, it is imperative to find the right buffer width that makes both wildlife conservationists happy as well as lumber companies. Using the parameters we stated before, researchers did a control sample of undisturbed riparian habitat and compared it to undisturbed upland habitats, post-logging 15-meter and 31-meter riparian buffer zones.
And so questions coming out of this paper. 1. Do buffers maintain pre-logging breeding bird populations in riparian habitat? And what bird species are associated with riparian habitat?
The methods in the paper were to get that bird species abundance richness pre and post harvest. 18 sites were designated with 20 different plots in each, 10 riparian count plots and 10 upland count plots, as well to find out the consistency of sites' forest stands. 10 riparian sample plots and 12 upland sample plots were made. The reason for the vegetation plots was to better estimate where specific bird species would nest from prior knowledge due to type of tree, forest cover, and type of food source, i.e. berries and invertebrates.
So this study found, as you can see on the first graph on the left, over the 2 years after the harvest, the narrow buffer had a higher species richness, but that's only because the birds that lived between the riparian upland areas began to nest in the buffer zone. The second graph on the right shows that species turnover over the 2-year period had begun to gradually level off. This is most likely due to the ecosystem reaching a new equilibrium. The narrow buffer zone turnover is still high. Now, with these scatter plots, it is depicting how for almost every species of bird found in these areas, the widest mean buffer width is somewhere around 35 meters. Results showed that birds who specialized in deciduous trees and berry-producing shrubby habitats increased in both treatments because of decreased competition. With the less than 14-meter buffer zone, a 20% turnover of bird species was noted, but the total bird population never changed. Birds just came and left more frequently, presumably due to the lack of habitat space.
So why was the study important? This information can be used to further regulate forest buffer zones across the western United States and maybe even some closely related ecosystems elsewhere in the world. It can also be used to sustain bird populations' richness and abundance in similar areas of study. Thank you
Thank you
for
for
listening.
listening.